Rockstars, Eric Andreas, your Guitar Sage here. Welcome, friends. Today we're going to be talking about what's the best guitar amp for you. This is essentially a 30,000 foot look at guitar amps, a buying guide, if you will. So if you're new to guitar, or if you're new to amps, and or you just don't know much about amps, there's lots to know. I'm going to give you a very broad stroke look at what's available out there. I'm also going to give you a link, if you would, to some suggestions that I have where to learn all about it, okay? So let's do this. I'm not answering questions. You know how this works. If you do want to ask me questions, you can do it on social, and you can also do it at the text number that I'm going to give you in just a moment. You just type in UGS and send that on to this number right here. And that's a way that you can get in touch with me. Obviously, if you're in UGS Pro, you can do it all day long. And then also, if you went into UGS Standard, first link below, or type free to that number right there, and I'll get you set up. All right, let's talk about it. Best guitar amps. So amps can be divided into a few different categories. Number one, you have solid state, you have tube, you have modelers, and you have profilers. And then lastly, we could even say that there's like hybrid. Now there's little schisms of those two. You know, you have headphone amps and preamps and those sorts of things, but we're talking about amps that you plug in that create volume, and you can play with a band, that sort of thing, or at least play louder than what your normal instrument may provide if just playing it by itself, right? So solid state are those that do not use tubes. Tube amps are those that use tubes. Let's talk about the difference between those two very quickly. A 100-watt solid state amp is not the same as a 100-watt tube amp. In fact, I had a 100-watt solid state amp sitting right next to, I think it was a 5-watt tube amp. I was A/Bing them to see what the actual output would be. And the 100-watt solid state amp was just slightly, just a teeny bit louder than the 5-watt tube amp. Tubes are a lot louder. They have a lot more dynamic range. So when you're buying your amps, consider that. You know, the actual amperage, it's not the same across solid state and tube. Make sure you listen to that amp, play it with a band or something like that if you need to get loud, okay? Now, what's the difference between solid state and tube? Otherwise, most guitar players prefer, at least rock and blues, they prefer tube amps. Jazz players, they don't mind so much the solid state amps. But for the most part, if you're a rock and blues player, they like that tube sound. It has a different way of expressing the instrument, okay? Again, these are broad strokes. We can't get into all the detail today. There's just no way we can do it in, sub 15 minutes. We have modelers, which essentially modelers and profilers, let me go back one, a hybrid amp. Let's talk about the hybrid amp. A hybrid amp is an amp that has a tube pre section, but then a post solid state section. So you can get the advantage of that tube amp, but number one, it's not super duper heavy, and you're still getting the quality sound, or arguably so, of tubes, but then the power section is solid state. Why would you want that? It's going to make the amp a little bit lighter, probably a little bit more affordable, but you're probably not going to get the same volume from it. Okay, that's a hybrid amp. Solid state amps, typically much lighter than tube amps. Tube amps are typically much heavier. They also are much louder, much more powerful. So you've got to choose there. And the hybrid amp has both. Now next is modelers and profilers. So right now I've got lots of amps. I have tube amps, I've got solid state amps. I probably have a hybrid thrown in there somewhere. I have modelers, and I have profiling amps. I have the whole enchilada. Use them for different things. Modeling amp and profiling amps are similar in that they're using digital characteristics of other amps. The difference between a modeler and a profiler gets a little sketchy. There are folks that talk about it here on YouTube and articles and what have you of the actual differences of it, but my understanding is, and I've owned both and I own both, is the modeler is basically copying the sound of something. Profiler is doing something similar, except you actually have to have the amp there to profile. So it's taking the characteristics of everything, the speaker, what you're running through it at that time, effects pedals, the whole 9 yards. It's taking a snapshot of that. So a profiler is it is a little bit more sophisticated, typically more expensive, and arguably more detailed than modelers. You can argue about that below. I'm not arguing. I'm just saying, what if you're into this, this is pretty agreed upon. Not everybody will agree with it. One of the kings of the profilers are Kemper Amp. That's what I'm using right now. I love them. As far as modelers, Line 6 is a great name, and they do a great job on that. Okay, so modelers and profilers, you get a lot of tonal bang for your buck, but again, you're not getting the volume typically that you might get. And then also, if there's an old classic plexi Marshall head that you just want to plug into, crank it, and go to town, that's what you're going to get, whereas you might not get that exact same sound from a profiler, but chances are it's going to be so close that you're not going to know the difference. Plus, you have 1,000 other amps in there, whereas this one amp here might have cost $1,500. This profiling amp may have cost $1,800, but you also have 1,000 other amps in it that you could choose from. You do the math. I love the profiler, and like I said, I own tons of classic amps and have slowly gotten rid of a lot of them because they're so big and bulky, and I can get the same sounds from my profiler. That's my opinion. Argue about it below. All right, now, combo or head. Which one should you get? A combo amp is that which has the amplified section in it, the preamp, the post-amp, and the speaker built into it. You carry it with you. It's all in one. They're very heavy, typically. As opposed to a head, which would be the pre and post amp section, and then that's it. There's no speaker or anything. So if you just brought a head in 100-watt Marshall head, it's not going to help you. You need a speaker cabinet, 412, a 410, a 210, a 212, something like that. Those are inch speakers, and how many? 4 12-inch speakers, 2 10-inch speakers, that sort of thing. So you need to have some sort of speaker cabinet. If you love the sound of your combo, no foul. It's perfect. Go with it. But if you like the sound of an amp but going through a certain speaker, then you may want to look at the separate components. Okay? That's the difference between a combo and a head speaker combination. You would need two separate things there, whereas a combo is all together. Now, for those of you that are looking for specifics, those of you that are looking for actual specifics of what to buy, you can always check out my store. I have a link for that that's down below. It's kit.co/YourGuitarSage. There it is as well. And I have some suggestions there on amps that I might buy, that I have. Things like the Blues Junior. To me, it is bar none the best combo amp as a whole. Again, we're looking for what's best for you, but as a whole, that amp takes pedals really well. It's loud enough for a band. It's cheap. It's lightweight. It's got built-in reverb, built-in EQ. It's got a great pre and post section in there so you can make it scream or make it nice and clean, whatever you want. It's made by Fender. Very affordable. One 12-inch speaker. It's all you need, right? So great amp. The Katana Amp, if you want to go really cheap, uber cheap, like $100 to $200, somewhere around that section, I believe the Katana is. Solid state, has effects built into it, not very loud, probably not going to be playing with a band with that. And then again, my favorite is Kemper. You'll see some of those in that link, okay? Now, other things to consider when buying an amp is what effects might or might not be built into it. Again, more is not always better. Depends what you want. There's a lot of hybrid amps now and a lot of solid state amps that have lots of effects built into it. They're great for home use when you're not playing with a band. This is general broad strokes here because of the volume that they don't produce. When you're playing with a drummer, you need a lot of volume, and a lot of times these modeling amps don't do that. They just don't have the power behind it. They're made for the bedroom type of thing. okay? So what effects are built in? Typically on higher end models, you typically only have maybe reverb and some sort of pre-post master, master volume, EQ section, those sorts of things built into the amp, okay? A reverb sometimes. Now, the next thing is loop. If you have a loop, okay, an effects loop built into the amp, typically higher end models will have an effects loop built into there. Basically what that means is there are certain effects, things like reverb, delay, modulation, that go post the pre-section. So typically that is done with an effects loop. It makes for cleaner, arguably cleaner tones, as opposed to having all the pedals go before the amp, going through the pre-section and the post-section. Typically, things like distortion, overdrive, wah, those sorts of things will go in the pre-section, and then there is what's called an effects loop that happens in between pre and post. That's where your cleaner effects like reverb, modulation, delay, and that sort of thing go. Higher end models will typically have a loop, but again, not always. There are very expensive amps out there that do not have an effects loop. So just depends on what you want. These are things to consider when you're buying, okay? Buyer's guide, if you will. Also, how many channels does your amp have? Some of them have multiple channels with breakout boxes that you can switch and, have an overdrive channel. My Black Star Soloist 60 has 3 channels effectively. It has a clean, it has a rocked out channel, and then a lead channel. And I can hit them all with pedals that are attached to that actually control the amp itself, okay? Not all of them have that. Speakers, what kind of speakers do you like? Best to listen to some different artists. Go with the ones that you like the best. If it's hard rock, find out what all the hard rock players are using. If it's jazz, find out what all the jazz players are listening to or using. No need to check out all these different amps if your genre that you like is not using that, okay? So very, very important. Don't get overwhelmed in this process. There's lots of different choices out there, okay? So bottom line, what does your favorite player use, your favorite players? Start dabbling in that pond first. Otherwise, you're really going to get lost at all the different options. And indecision, creates paralysis, so don't do that. Really quick story here. A buddy of mine went to a ZZ Top show, went backstage afterwards, noticed that old Billy Gibbons had many different guitars, many different amps, but at the end of the day, he's like, well, man, it all sounded the same. That's because a lot of times you have a particular sound that you're going for. It's not so much the fingers. I have a video on that. It's not tone is not in the fingers. Argue below, that's fine. I did a whole video debunking that. It has very little to do with the fingers, a lot to do with the gear that you use. That's why the pros use pro gear, and they have specific things that they do. But at the end of the night, he watched the show, all the sounds were the same. Why is that? It's because Billy tweaked everything to sound a certain way. So his amps and his guitars and everything else. That said, there's not magical settings for an amp and then you set it and you're done. You have to bring them in, sculpt these sounds, no matter what you have. Cheap amp, expensive amp, doesn't matter if you don't know how to work with it. And again, it's all subjective. What sounds do you like? If you don't know how to turn a knob, which you do know how to do that, you just keep doing it until you get the sound you like, okay? Watch some tutorials online. All right. That is it in a nutshell, my friends. Link is down below, okay, with suggestions to different types of amps. kit.co/YourGuitarSage right there will give you access to some of the ones that I suggest. But again, do your homework. Listen to amps online right here on YouTube or wherever else. Read reviews. Do lots of homework, but do not get that paralysis. I've owned dozens and dozens of amps over my life, and I liked them all for different reasons, okay? Just get something, move on. You're probably going to get a different amp eventually in life, all right? Friends, I'm here to help you. Please let me know how I can do it. Can't answer the questions live because of these shorter broadcasts, but there's so many different ways that you can get in touch with me. Text, social, all. In fact, my social links, on all the places, I'm there. So just hit me up there, especially Instagram. I can always voicemail you back. Quick way for me to get back with you. Also, I have a texting bit that you can get in touch with me right here at this number. If you're in UGS already, then just type UGS and we'll be incommunicado together. Otherwise, type FREE at that same number and I will get you set up with UGS Standard, the top 30-ish, more than 30 lessons that I provide all my students, or click the very first link below. Friends, I'm here to help you, and the only way I can help you is we're communicating with each other. So like this video, subscribe, hit that notification bell. This is the only way we can communicate together, right? It's a big, big world. There's lots of stuff to distract you. Please let me assist you. Friends, I'm out of here. I'm Eric Andres. See ya.